and be sharing it. I did receive a few emails. I'm just waiting for the information from Coach Morris. He is going to send it to me, and I will be posting that recording from Tuesday night and Wednesday night shortly. So it is coming. It has all been recorded. So, sir, it's all yours. We'll kind of keep our mics and cameras off, and you're the show. I appreciate you joining us.
Awesome. Thanks, Taylor. I'm actually going to turn my screen off after I share here, and we'll get started. All right. Should be good. All right. So good evening, everyone. As Taylor said, my name is Rich Upson. So I'm a football coach at Marshfield High School here, just outside of Boston. I'm from Marshfield originally, graduated in 2009. I started coaching there right after I graduated. We compete in Division II in Massachusetts. It's the second largest division in Massachusetts. I am the QB coach currently for us. Last year, as I was starting my role at HUDL, I was only scouting, so I'm looking forward to get back into coaching this year. You don't realize, it's all the time at practice you actually enjoy. Just a little bit about our program. We're an up-tempo spread offense, so no huddling at all. Our head coach really pushes that philosophy of being up-tempo. It's how we practice on both sides of the ball, and I certainly love it. I think our kids love it too. Defensively, we're typically a 3-4. I'm a big fan of it as well, and most of my scouting last year was defensive focused, and so it'll be nice to get to focus back on the offensive side of the ball. We have had some success. We won state titles my first year coaching, most recently in 2014. We still got some players. We got 3 guys playing Division I football right now. We actually have 1 current NFL player. He's actually the long snapper in Tampa Bay. So it's been funny reaching out to him. He's a Boston guy now. With Gronkowski and Brady there, New England seems like they've got a second team now. So we're going to dive into this to get started. So first thing we're going to do is I'm going to highlight what I consider to be some must-use tools in HUDL. Some of these things might be a little repetitive for some of you early on, but my hope is to establish at least a baseline. And then as we really dig in on some of these topics, you'll have some material to reference back to. So the first thing is the quick filter tool. This will help you expediting your film process. It's something we rolled out like late January or so. And it's really helping with putting together playlists and speeding up that initial breakdown process when you get in those exchanges. The next thing we're going to discuss are formation reports. We're going to look at how you can use them both for opponent scouting and self-scouting. Same thing with the what's next report and the advantages of using that for both opponent and self-scouting. We're going to take a look at some custom reports. And we're also going to look at installs for mainly offense today. But the nice thing about installs is you can use them for all 3 phases. So first thing with the quick filters. So if you're looking at your library here, you'd see the little filters column right here. HUDL has preloaded quick filters on there, which are things that coaches in the past have typically broken their film down from. So we have all offense, all passes, all runs, third downs, and red zone. So you can see in our library here, as you get later on in the season, this was our last game of the year. We've got 5 opponent films. It's nice that I can just select all those opponent films and quickly get some bigger breakdowns done right away. The other nice thing is you can use these week over week. So it's not as if you got to go back in each week and recreate them. And then we're actually going to talk about making some custom filters up next. So with custom filters, they are nice because you can get really specific with your playlist. So I've got a little video here that I'll talk through as it's going. So as you'll see here, I'm just selecting a few games that I want to run custom filters for. Now I'll pause right here. So you'll see this new filter tab after you select some games. And what you're going to do is you're going to select that tab and you're going to go in and you're going to select what you want to break this film down by. So right here, what we're doing is I'm breaking this down by yard line, and I'm going to give a breakdown of the red zone. Our head coach likes to have us break the red zone down into 3 parts. So we go 25 to 11, 10 to the 3-yard line, and 3-yard line to the goal line. So what we do is we actually create a playlist of our opponent's offensive and defensive plays for those 3 sections of the red zone. And what we're doing in this video, lost it there, we'll jump ahead, is actually just setting up those parameters. As you'll see here, we're entering in 25, we're entering in 11, we'll hit add to quick filters. And then right here, because in this film, I want to look at the opponent's offense, we're going to select that this is going to be an offensive breakdown. And then we're just going to label it whatever works for you. In this case, helps me remember opponent O, RZ, 25 to 11. You'll hit that save. And now you'll see this filter popped up along with all the other ones. And it's already selected and ready to go. So all you're going to do is hit create playlist. And now that playlist you'll see over here on the right-hand side of the video, that playlist has been added to your opponent's scout. You can do these for self-scouting as well. If you do it for self-scouting, just be aware it's going to go to the playlist of the last game that you selected. So if you're self-scouting, say, getting ready for the postseason or something, it's going to, whatever week that you selected your last film from, that's where it's going to save the playlist in. And then, as I said, now that you've created this playlist, each week that you have an opponent, you'll be able to go in, select their film, and quickly add that playlist to your breakdown. So you don't need to go through and reset this every week. It's always going to be there for you going forward. I know some of you might have already used this feature because we did roll it out during the off season. I know it was a little newer, but it's going to tie into what we do a little bit later when I discuss installs and how we can use quick filters to help drive those installs. So next up, this is just a formation report, the overview. I'm going to go really deep into the formation report. It's personally my favorite tool that we have on HUDL. And I think a lot of coaches do use it to some degree, but I don't think they realize how much information they can actually pull from it. And so some tips and tricks on how to input your data to really maximize what the report gives you. So this is just one that I had for last year for our first 3 games. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with it, just giving you your top formations, the top plays in those formations. And then this is one of the sample play cards where you're seeing an even more in-depth breakdown there. You know, it has your typical things, your run pass, down distance, formation strength, backfields down here in the bottom left. We're going to discuss this a bit more at the end, and how if you use this backfields column when you're tagging your video, it can really change what this report does for you. So I'm not going to go into a ton of detail on that yet. I want to touch on the other reports, then we'll circle back. Now, what's next report? So this is already in your library. It's another HUDL created report that I think is a really good jumping off point, and it pairs really well with that formation report. So as you see here, I just have a film selected. You go up to your reports tab, and then you're going to see what's next right there. It's nice because you can use it for some self-scouting and some opponent scouting as well. We'll take a little bit closer look here. So this was a sample what's next report after our first 3 games last year. As you use this, as you get more film throughout the year, this report gets more accurate. So you'll see in some scenarios right here, like game-changing scenarios. In our first 3, we only had one run pass over 30 yards. We were 1 and 2 to start the year, so it's not that big of a surprise that we weren't really ripping off some big plays early on. So just keep in mind, as you use this report, it's only going to get better and better with more and more film you have, not only for yourself, but for your opponents, just because there's more information that the report's going to pull from. And as I said, this is a really great jumping off point because it ties in really well with your formation report. And I'll show you how with this. So we look at it and, you know, what are some takeaways that we can get from this? And up here, I put a little snippet from our formation report here just showing our favorite run plays. So I'm going to switch over to my laser pointer here. So if you look at when we have a run over 10 yards here, this report's telling me that 75% of the time we run the ball again. And it's telling me that it thinks 55% of the time we're going to be in our blue or red formation, which for us is a tight end, is our base formation usually. It's a tight end and a receiver and a slot and usually a flanker. So in my opinion, if I was an opponent of us and I look at this and I see, hey, 75% of the time after they rip off a 10-yard run, they're coming back with another run. That's a big enough tendency that I want to try and take advantage of that. So as a self-scout, this is letting me know that this is something we need to be aware of because we're clearly too reliant on another run play right after that. And now, even though it's giving me some information here, it's saying it thinks that it might be Alabama. This little exclamation points, HUDL telling me that, hey, this is only 2 out of 11 times. So it's not very confident that this is the play that you might see on this, but it's giving you its best guess based on the information. So now I know that if I'm scouting myself, I expect a run play after a run of 10 yards, but I'm not too sure what that run play is going to be. So now let's use that formation report that we discussed and look at the favorite run plays out of red and blue. These are those top run plays. Sure enough, we look at it, Alabama is that top run play for us no matter what. Now, Clemson concept for us is a jet sweep. That's a close second. So if I'm scouting us, I'm thinking, all right, I've tagged this as inside zone and jet sweep. Those are the two things I'm expecting. There's a pretty good chance they're going to come up after our team has a 10-yard run. Now, as our quarterback coach, I'll, bring this information. I always want to throw the ball. I'll bring this to my head coach and say, hey, coach, we're running the ball a lot after we get a big run here. Let's mix in a pass or two. And we are an RPO team, so there is a little bit of variance for us. Our coach will call some run plays and we're throwing it quite a bit. But we do tend to lean about 60-40 run pass. So this report's really nice because it shows you what your opponents could potentially be doing, and then also what you tend to do. And some of these things you might not even be aware of. We're going to move on from this, and we're going to start discussing creating some custom columns and reports. And I'm sure a lot of you probably have some experience with this, but I want to note really what you can do with these custom columns and how they can help you create better custom reports. I think one of the things that we're still trying to get better at with HUDL is giving you data points or stats that you can really make useful charts and reports with. So I put these two examples up here. So on the left, this is the exact same report. The only difference is this offensive play versus this offensive play type column. So offensive play is a column that I'm sure we're all familiar with in HUDL, where we're showing the exact offensive play that's run. We have an ISO run. Anything you see tonight that's an A, that's all of our inside zone concepts. Stanford for us is a counter concept. But you see on first down here, there's 8 different play types. That doesn't really give me a lot of information, especially since some of these are, only run one time. So what I did with this was I realized that doesn't help me a lot. I need to create a column that is grouping these runs together so that I can present our defensive staff a better overall picture of what this opponent wants to do. So what I did is I created this offensive play type. I bucketed the runs into an inside run and an outside run. I also added in trick play, counter, and then short, medium, and long pass. By doing this makes a report that we can actually start to take some information from. We're now seeing that first down, when this opponent's backed up, 50% of the time they're running an inside run play. Now, again, we can go back to that formation report and really dive in on what those run plays are, but this is a lot easier for our defensive staff to start to build a game plan around. And as we see here, and we'll get into this report a little bit more later for other areas of the field as well, this team was inside run, inside run, inside run. That's not every play, and we're not saying it's a guarantee. But now as a defensive coach, I've got a better idea of what I want to do based on that. And again, this is another report that as you get throughout the year and get more film, it's only going to become more and more accurate as it has more and more information to pull from. I'm going to jump to our next one here. So just going to quickly run through creating custom columns. Again, I'm sure a lot of us are already doing this to some degree, but just so we have a point of reference as we discuss the custom reports here. So what you'll see is I'm going into team settings. I'm going to hit add breakdown data here. And I'm going to create a report. Just in this video, I just did one called QB read. This would be, if we get a team that's a mix of zone read and zone offense, that I want to know what plays the quarterback's actually making a read or not. So after I create that yes, no, just jump back into the library. I'm going to select whatever film I want to watch. In this case, it's our offense from last year. Going to go to columns, add the columns, scroll through, find whatever column you just added, drag it or click it into your set. Just for ease of use, I just moved it around so it was closer to my offensive play type here. And I just went through and showed how now I'm ready to go and start labeling those plays there. And again, you can make any custom column you want. It's really up to you and figuring out how those columns are going to help you best and how you can use those in reports best. Because now I'm going to show you basically what I did for this play predictor report here that I was just looking at and referencing. Oh, my video jumped back. Sorry. There we go. So I've selected the film I wanted. Going down to create custom report. I'm sure some of us have done this. The one thing I do want to highlight on this, and I'll pause it right here, is we all probably have a pretty good idea of what pieces of information we want to see in our custom report, but we have to be very aware of how we select those pieces of information to make the report readable for ourselves. And then if it's something you share with your players, making sure that it's something that's readable for them as well, or your other staff. When HUDL first started, we didn't have this little preview window here. And I remember just kind of guessing as to what my reports would look like. I would have to run 4 or 5 reports before I finally got it figured out. So thankfully there is this preview window now, which, as you familiar with, it is showing you what this report looks like as you're selecting your columns. And I've still have times now where I think I'm selecting the correct columns, but then I get partway through and I'm like, that report doesn't really make sense. Ooh, come on. Sorry, trying to jump through these videos can be a little tough. Might just be easier if I move it. There we go. So as you see here, this is just like that report that I had up earlier. I've got our field zone here for this little preview is just showing them backed up. I've got our down, and I'm using that custom column offensive play type. Be cautious about adding distance into these reports. I tend to find the distance kind of muddies the water a little bit, and we already have a down and distance report within HUDL that gives us some good general breakdown information. So I tend to stick just to use field position and down on this play predictor report. I think it's enough information for an overall kind of prediction report. And then you have your formation and then the down and distance report to really dig in more on the specifics that you might see in certain down and distances. I'm sure some other defensive coaches in here, what our defensive coordinator does is he has one just for third down with their common plays that they like in their third down scenarios. So just be aware of how you format these reports. After these, the next tool that I really like using are the installs and the playbook function of HUDL. I think the installs especially are something that a lot of coaches don't get the full value of. Uh, right now, we're rebuilding our installs for our team because we're going to actually drive everything through our installs for offense, defense, and special teams. So I would be showing you our install playbook, but it's currently, we're starting from scratch. We just had it deleted. So I grabbed some screenshots before we did that to show you what it typically looks like. One thing I do want to note about it that and why I think it's really a great tool is because we're giving the kids information in 3 different mediums here. So we have that traditional play diagram that I'm sure we're all familiar with. We also have our video clips and the written assignments. I think anytime we can offer information to our players and it's not just the same way, hey, I only do diagrams. This is all you get from me. That we're really giving them as many chances as possible to succeed. And we're also eliminating some of those excuses of, oh, well, I just don't learn that well from that. So, well, there's 3 different options here. There's going to be one that's going to stick with you. And I don't care. I'm happy to put all this information down. Whatever's going to work for the kids to retain the information, that's the biggest thing. And I think the installs really help us do that. And the nice thing with the installs, they pair really well with the quick filters tab. So I just touched on the quick filters earlier, how to make one. And on this example, I'm going to show you how the quick filters pair really well with the installs to help make you playlists that line up with those installs that you create. So in this video, I've made a quick filter and I called it 3-game Ace Nasty Clemson. So you'll see it right here at the top. This was just our first 3 games, our formation, and our jet sweep concept. So going through, I'm selecting the playlist, got that playlist created. Now in this video, you're just going to see me move it around. It was just so it was easier to find. You can certainly keep it in your opponent's scout. That's totally up to you. Since we were self-scouting, I just moved it down here. So once you get that situated wherever you want, you want to go ahead and should be done. So now here's that play I've drawn up in the install. Now we're going to go ahead, we're going to attach those clips. And you'll see HUDL is going to try and give you suggested clips here. Now, this is one of my pet peeves with our product, something I think we need to get better at. Half the time, these clips aren't really relevant to me. Part of it can be it's not the right defense that I want to see, or it's not the right variation of formation I want to see. So this is where I think creating those quick filters is a huge advantage, because now I have a quick filter playlist that I can go through and scroll directly to, and I know it's going to have the exact plays that I need for this install. I don't have to try and scroll through and guess where they are. I have a playlist that I can keep going back to, and if I want to, I can create a diagram for every play in the playlist. So I've got it selected. I know all these clips line up with it. I'm selecting them. And it's nice. Once you select one, you go back in and it's going to keep you in that playlist. So you don't have to keep scrolling back through for it. And jumping to the last part with installs here. So this is ultimately why I say to use installs. This video right here I'm going to play. This is if your athlete logs into their HUDL app, this is what they see when they see installs. They see the diagram, they see the video, they see everything written out for them. So I don't know about your player, and you can go ahead and click the clips. I might work at HUDL. I don't know how to turn this video halfway through, so I'm just going to stop it here. But why use installs? Kids can easily access the install info on the HUDL app. Every kid has a cell phone. Every kid on our team has the HUDL app on their phone because we communicate with them through messages, and it gives the kids the info in those 3 different forms right there on the phone. So if one kid doesn't care about the diagrams, that's fine. He can go through and watch all the videos. If one kid doesn't really care about the videos and just wants to read about his blocking assignment, he can do that as well. All 3 phases of the team can use them. So it's not like it's just an offensive thing or just a defensive thing. For us, what we typically do is we'll share our installs during the day. Anywhere between 8 and 10 a.m., our coach will put out the installs that we're going to work on for that day. And we'll have film at 4:30. We practice at 5:30 at night. And we know when we walk into film at 4:30, kids have already watched that. They've already seen everything that we're going to show them or touch on in film. And we've taken what used to be like a 45-minute film session, and we've gotten it down to about 15 or 20 minutes. We review the previous day's practice film, and we answer any questions they might have at installs. What it's done, it's been really nice because it's eliminated some of the excuses going, well, I don't understand how the defense is teaching it, or I don't understand the offensive coach because he teaches it differently. We're giving everyone the information the same way. They all have access to the HUDL app on their cell phone. And it's really making the kids accountable, because if they want to win and they want to know what they're doing, they have the information right there in their fingertips. And if any kid tells you, hey, I didn't use my phone today, or I didn't get a chance to look at it, we all know that's not the truth. And by putting them in the HUDL app, we're just increasing the chance that they're going to stick around and look at something else. I know for myself, I'll open up an app, or I'll start going down a YouTube rabbit hole. Our kids are the same way. They want to see their highlights, or they want to see other things. So give them a reason to go into HUDL, and it's only going to have them stick around longer. And piggybacking off this is just a sample of our scouting report. And what we've done is we've pulled diagrams here directly from our HUDL diagrams, so that it looks the exact same when we're going through things. When we hand this to them Monday, they're seeing these exact same diagrams every single day. They're not seeing diagrams one way one day, and then another day they're seeing them a different way. And again, we're making these something they can consume on their phone. Installs, again, help for this. But what we use is we just use Google Docs. Every kid at our school has a Google Chromebook. We're fortunate for that. So they all have a Google account. So we just create a Google Doc. We share the doc with them in a group message on HUDL on Monday. So they go into that group message. They know to expect it. And the nice thing about the doc is it's there. It's not like it's a physical piece of paper. When I first started scouting for us, 10 years ago, I would print out 30, 40 copies of a physical scouting report. We come in after that practice that day, half are in the trash, half are on the floor. And if you go to reference that the next day, you don't have a kid going, Coach, can I get another one? Because we can just say, go look at your phone. It's there. And again, reiterating that message that if we're putting this scouting report in HUDL, there's just another reason for them to go into that app and look at more information there. And one thing, this is more of just my personal philosophy on building a scouting report and using HUDL's tools for it, is we don't tend to give them all the specifics. We try and give them the formation or player tendencies that are easy to ID at the line of scrimmage. One thing that I hear a lot of clinics, and sometimes it makes it tough. We get a coach from Texas or something. He talks about, well, we have spring practice, summer practice, and then we've got winter time. I'm sure we're probably similar to how you guys are structured. We get once a week in the summer for a captain's practice, but we don't start until 2 weeks before our season. That's all the time we're allowed to have with the kids. So we really can't hammer as much football knowledge into them as we'd like to as coaches. But I don't care who your kids are. Simple things like this, and this was fortunate we came across this. Black, tight end and two receivers. 100% of runs go to the offense's left or right, that strong side of the formation. Your kid doesn't need to pass a single math class to know that 100%'s every time. So just find those simple stats that are easy for the kids to remember. And even if every kid doesn't remember everything, that's okay. If a couple kids on the defense remember the first two, a couple remember the second two, as long as they communicate well in the field, it's going to translate. But just keep it bare bones. It's our job as the coaches to be that filter, take in all the information, and then pare it down through HUDL to give them, what they can really use and apply quickly in a game here. Well, off of this, we're going to dig into opponent scouting a little bit more. I tend to use HUDL's tools in kind of 4 buckets here. The first one is situation and location tendencies. The next one are formation and motion tendencies. Then we're going to talk a little bit more about play prediction, and then defensive blitzes, fronts, and coverages. So play calling tendencies, situation, and location. Some things that I consider or put under this bucket: play direction, field position, hash or field boundary, down and distance. So these are the things that when we break up and as a staff, we kind of divvy these up amongst ourselves. These are when we discuss situation and location, these are the things that we're looking at. So the basic summary report that HUDL offers, just a good jumping off point. I'm not going to go into too much depth because there really isn't much here. Just giving you your basic run pass, top 3 run and pass plays, and then top 3 formations. You can look at explosive plays. I personally don't put a lot into the explosive plays tab. I know some coaches really do value it. I think it's a little bit too random. But if it is something that you value, take a look at the summary report just as a jumping off point. Most of the time, though, you're not going to – I think high school coaches now are aware enough that these reports are easy to access, so you won't usually get too many big tendencies out of these. Where I think you do start to see some tendencies, though, are down and distance reports. Again, this is another HUDL generated report. So as you see, we've got our down and distance based on we have our run pass here, and down and distance in field position, down and distance run pass, field position run pass. There's a couple other ones that are kind of cut off from the bottom here, which are down and distance plus formation and plus field position, and then down and distance plus play and field position. I'm not really upset that they're cut out. I think those are kind of parts of reports that, as I was talking about earlier, it's almost too much information, and it doesn't really give you anything because everything is so subdivided. And that's where, when we jump back into the custom reports in a couple minutes, we can, again, help eliminate those really choppy reports with some good custom reports. So now we're going to look at formation and motion tendencies. And this is where we're going to dive back into the formation report from an opponent scouting perspective. Again, to me, this is the best thing we have as far as reports at HUDL. And it's really up to you as a coach how much you want to put into it as far as the information it's going to give back to you. So that formation and motion, we're going to look at alignment and movement tendencies that can help us learn top formations we need to prepare for, play calling tendencies based on formation, play type tendencies based on formations, and personnel tendencies. So this here is an overview of 1 page of our opponent formation report. I tend to give this presentation to some local coaches and more one-on-one stuff. So I do apologize because the plays and the formations are blurred out. Our head coach, is probably like a lot of you head coaches who's worried about people stealing our stuff. So it's nothing against you guys. I will happily share anything after, but for this scenario here, it is blacked out. But we can still look at all the data here, which is really what we want to look at. So first things, when we look at this report, there is a lot to take in here, but we want to figure out, what are some key things that we can take away from this. So right off the bat, let me jump back. So right off the bat here, fairly balanced as far as run pass, at least in my opinion. It's 90 runs to 65 passes, a 60-40 split. I think that's pretty balanced. I would say most high school coaches are probably somewhere in that area, depending on what your offensive philosophy is there. Also very balanced run direction here. 46 to the left and 45 to the right. You can't get much more balance than that. So again, we're looking initially, there's not a whole lot there, but there are some things we can take advantage of. The first thing that jumps out over here in the bottom right is the field boundary tendency here. they pass 80% of time to the field. That's a significant number there. And now it's going to be up to us as coaches to figure out why, when they're in trips, are they passing to that field side? Are they putting the trips to the field side, or are they taking this tight end and splitting him out, and they're trying to isolate that tight end to the wide side of the field and give him a lot of, room to work with there? So the nice thing is you can dive into, in this, I can't click it here, but if you are in HUDL, you can click on the number in the report, and it's going to take you to those clips showing you the passes to that field side. The other thing that jumps out to me here is motion and play direction are 70-30 split. So if you look down here with motion, 72% of the plays with motion, the play goes the same direction as the motion. So I can tell you this is our big rival. So I know, without even thinking about this, I know the plays that they utilize that take advantage of motion, and it's what they really do is jet, power, read, and then the only time they really go against motion is their counter play, whether it be with the quarterback or a tailback. So now that I look at these bottom formations here, if I look at this one in the middle, this empty formation, if I were to see this slot player motion across, I can now coach up and practice, and I'm expecting either power read with the quarterback, or we're going to get jet along the edge here 70% of the time. And now, so I can really have my edge players work on, one's going to take the quarterback. Maybe my linebacker's now going to take that jet player. We can work to overload or run that alley a little bit. And I'm going to just coach the heck out of my backside players that if they're seeing any pulling from the guards, we're going to, work our butt off to not let them run counter back against it. So this is where knowing your opponent and watching film, you might not have to dive into this too much. You're just going to say, okay, with the play, I'm getting 70% motion. I know what plays they're going to look to do with that. To me, this really shows the value of this formation report. We're getting formation tendencies. We're getting run pass tendencies. We're getting directional tendencies, down and distance, and then efficiency, which if you're not familiar with the efficiency column in HUDL, you'll see the little EFF here and some different percentages. What efficiency is, it's a HUDL generated stat. It says that if you gain 40% of the yards that you need for to get a first down, so if you get on first down, you get 40% of yards. So say it's 1st and 10, you get 4 yards, that play's deemed as efficient. Then on 2nd down, if you get at least half of the yards you need for a first down, that play's also efficient. So if we get 4 yards on first down and we got 2nd and 6, if I get 3 yards, now I'm setting up a 3rd and 3, that 2nd down play was efficient. And then for us, any 3rd down play that converts and get us to another first down, that play is also efficient. So you can see here, 62% of the time this top play is deemed efficient for them. That's a pretty good ratio. I'd say anything over 50% is a pretty good play to run. And this coach looks like he probably takes a look at this because he's got his highest to lowest pretty much there for his top run plays.
So Rich, I'm going to interrupt you there and give you a chance to breathe a bit and ask you a couple questions specific to Canada.
Yeah,
a coach had asked, your field setup, sometimes it's just set up for the American game, which is 100 yards. We are 110. So is there a setting or something that maybe this coach can find and make it easier? And then also when you're talking about efficiency, we also play 3 down. So is there also a setting to adjust that?
That is a really good question.
Oh, someone just asked that question too. So yeah.
So that is something that I was thinking about when I was going to explain this. I'm not sure about adjusting the efficiency or the field position. I can take a quick look here.
You can make a note and come back for sure.
Yeah, I'll just back out real quick and I'll show you guys.
And another coach just said he's asked HUDL yearly, and the answer is no. So maybe just a note to maybe take back to your team. And
For sure, yeah.
you
I
have a
will,
lot of Canadian clients playing three down, 110-yard field as well.
so yeah, that was something I knew about the 3 down, and I knew the field was bigger, and I've never obviously it hasn't been an effect for myself, so I haven't thought about that.
Yep.
But it kind of seems like a no-brainer. I don't know how heavy of a lift that would be for them to make that adjustment. It doesn't seem like it should take a whole lot because it's really only adding some extra yardage into that column.
Good. And there was just another comment, and we can probably talk about it after, some ideas for tagging and how to put the film in. And sometimes some of our smaller programs, or most of our programs, only have enough time to get down and distance in, let alone, a lot more of the stats. The one idea I've seen at a successful high school is they use their students, they use some of their players, and they can either sometimes get credits, or if they have a spare, they're willing. Students nowadays are so impressive when it comes to technology. They could probably learn how to tag a game and do it twice as fast as we probably can. So just a suggestion or an idea. I'm sure, Rich, you might have other ideas of how to effectively tag a game and put everything, as much stats as you can within it, so you can then utilize it on the other end when you're doing these reports.
Yeah, I will say we are very fortunate. The person who films our game for us, he previously has coached with us as well. He's also a teacher in our building. Our head coach is a teacher. So what they've kind of done is they've recruited some people. We have 2 managers that will keep track of the stats during the game for us. And they do that. And our coach gives them a varsity letter jacket for coming. And all they have to do is just come to the games, and they get to travel on the bus with us. They don't have to get themselves there, but they'll actually get a varsity letter jacket just for keeping track of they'll stand there by the head coach, and they'll listen to him yell out the formation, and another one listens to the play. So at least that information, we can try and save some time. And then we are fortunate that, as I would say, the person who films our game, he gets a couple of students. He teaches the communications class. So we get a couple of students that come out and film for us, and then also help us a little bit with some of the playlist organization. Because I'm sure there are other coaches in this that they're kind of deemed the HUDL coach for their staff. That's been kind of my position for quite a bit, as I've always been the youngest coach on staff until recently. So it's been nice to have those students, because you're right, they pick up so quick, and it does save a lot of time on the coaching end, so we can really focus on watching the film and then taking in all this information that I'm putting out here. That is something that's tough. You'll hear, I go back to coaches down in Texas. So it's like, oh yeah, we have 18 coaches that help us break down the film. And so, when I sit down a meeting on Sunday, I have everything ready to go. That's great. But I don't know what it's like for you guys. A lot of us, we're not getting paid to be coaches full time. We're either volunteering, or we're getting paid very little, and we've got another full-time job on top of it. And going to practice and games alone is already, basically a second full-time job. I don't necessarily have the time to do another 20 hours of film breakdown, and we don't have unlimited other coaches to do it for us. So I think students is a really good option.
Great. And before you continue, just everybody, I'm not sure if you have the chat open, but read the chat. Matt had a really good, thought or piece of advice there. The Calgary High School has a 50 to 50 yard line. So that issue of having 110 yards isn't an issue. So maybe you could look at that.
I think, did you guys play like a sectional or division championship games on that field last year in Calgary?
Not that it's a field. He said the HUDL setup. Maybe Matt, you want to jump on and explain that. But the way they get their film set up, it's only set up has the 50 to 50 yard line or something.
Okay. Gotcha. That makes sense. Yeah, because I tried to get myself a little bit, familiar with it. I admittedly naive. I don't consume a lot of Canadian football, so I was trying to see some of the differences. As a coach that runs jet sweep, I'm envious of you guys getting to put seemingly everyone in motion as the play is happening. I wish we could do that for some of our edge blocking, because it's really tough when you're asking like a 150-pound kid to try and block an outside linebacker, and all he wants to do is catch passes and not block. So if I could
Not
send 3 people at that outside linebacker, it'd be great.
not to mention it's a little bit wider, so we can spread them out. If you get
Mm-hmm.
the edge, you're gone. So yeah.
Yep.
And he says to clarify, our yard line column goes all the way to the 55. So I believe there's an opportunity to set it up somehow. They don't have an issue with it. So maybe just look a little bit further into that. The gentleman who had the question earlier. So
Yeah.
go ahead and continue.
Sure.
Maybe
Yeah.
you can. Whoever had that question, Trevor, maybe. You can also individually text or chat with Matt within this group chat here if you want to just text them privately. All right,
Yeah.
go ahead.
All right. So we'll jump back in. So wrapped up formation report here. So next up is a personnel report. So this is a custom report that I did for an opponent we played last year. And you can run, this report right now. What I realized with this challenge about it, and I touched on this a little bit earlier on custom reports, is I originally ran this report with the personnel and then the offensive play name. And what happened was kind of what I was talking about earlier. There was this team, they ran inside run plays, but they ran ISO, they ran trap, they ran, double lead play. They ran just a straight fullback dive. There were so many variations of that inside run that it really watered it down. So I'm calling back to this offensive play type, but I really encourage you as coaches to find columns or stats that are a good broader range stat for you so you can create more readable reports. And then you start to fall back on something like that formation report to dig into those more specifics. For this team here, this was our playoff game against them last year. They were the top team in the state. They were really good. We got into the playoffs as the 8 seed, and I think their only loss was some big private school. They always travel out of state every year. So that was their only loss. They've been putting up a ton of points. So we realized if we were going to even stay close, we had to, really scout up stuff. They would run. They have a very varied offense, but every game they would run at least one series in a wildcat formation with just getting direct snaps, and another with an eligible tackle. They swap out their wide receiver and bring in their defensive end is an eligible tackle there. And we were like, oh man, they were a run heavy team, but we couldn't figure out exactly what they were doing. So what this play type really did was it helped us get an understanding of that concept that they were trying to take advantage of, or that area of the formation they were really trying to hit with this personnel. So what did we do once we figured this out? When they went wildcat, we saw that extra running back come in to play quarterback. Us being we played a 4-front against them this year, and we took out a safety and went to a 5-3 look. But you'd see a lot of like youth teams play, and we just didn't worry about the pass. Most times when you see a wildcat quarterback, that you don't really have to worry about it. But they like to run a lot of motion, so they give you this illusion that they're bringing in the wildcat quarterback to run jet and stuff, and really, 50% of the time they're running an inside run play. The other 27% there, so now we're getting almost 80%, was like a QB counter or a tailback counter off that jet motion. So we brought in that extra D lineman, put someone to head up the center. It did wonders for us. They still had success. I'm not going to pretend like we won the game, but we only held them to 14 points defensively. Their first drive, they came out, we picked them off about our goal line. Our head coach he's since learned from this. Our first offensive play, we had a sophomore playing quarterback for us. Nervous, he snaps the ball too early with a guy in jet motion, hits him in the helmet, rolls into our end zone. They pick it up for a touchdown. So we gave up a touchdown basically on offense, but defensively we played fantastic. Because we realized wildcat here was inside run, and then they went with this eligible tackle in what would look like this big, run behind this extra tackle run set. it was actually almost exclusively using this offensive tackle to set the edge there. 67% of the time they were running either jet sweep towards him or they were running toss to his side. That scouting report that I referred to earlier was of this same team. And that 100% run to that tight end trips look there, that was that eligible tackle. And they were just trying to completely overload that side and run. They had a good tailback, just toss him the ball and let him go. So what we ended up doing was we took out our, we went from a 4-man line to like a 3-4 or a 3-5 and just really loaded up that edge to that trip side because we knew 100% of the time they had run the ball all year to that trip side. And our philosophy was, all right, we're going to take that away and we're going to force them to either do something they don't like to do or something they might not have practiced at all. And we'll just live with that result. I mean, that's the best you can do when you're finding an opponent that is, more talented than you. Try and find their second or third option and make them go to that. And that's something we wouldn't have really figured out because it wasn't so clear on film because we were seeing all the different play types. We weren't seeing just the broader play concepts here. So custom reports to predict plays. I'm going to move through this one a little bit because we did dive into it. I'm just going to highlight a couple things. So the what's next report touches the surface, but the custom report helps us create those predictive reports, and they can help us make those key defensive and offensive calls. So this is where we're starting to bring everything together. Using the what's next report, the formation, and the custom reports give you that whole picture of everything. So I'm going to jump back to this play predictor, but now we're getting a larger view here. So earlier on, we highlighted that, hey, this team runs the ball inside run, inside run, inside run, all 3 downs when they're backed up. So now we're getting a larger view, though. We're starting to see, all right, what do they do when they're not backed up? And again, we're using that offensive play type. And then how are we going to define those inside runs? We're going to go back to our formation report. And again, this is an opponent I know well. So I know inside run for them is going to be inside zone. So this is where we're going to lean on these reports and work together. When they're backed up, they're predictable. But as we start to see here, they get a little bit less predictable when they move out of the shadow of their own end zone. So first down, yes, it's still an inside run for both. But we're seeing these percentages that were in the 40s and 50s. Now they're coming down to 30, and 25 here. It's getting less predictable. They're a good team as well. You're seeing some average numbers here. Hey, if you're getting 6 yards a carry, I don't blame you for running the ball 50% of the time. Keep running it. But if we can force them into, a 2nd and long or a 3rd and long here, we know that they stay pretty safe with their passing here. Whereas when we look at their 1st and 2nd downs, they've got a long pass. They run counter quite a bit when they're out of their own end zone. They run some outside run plays. So we are starting to see they are harder to defend once they get outside of that area. So as a coaching staff, we had to look at ourselves and say, all right, what can we do based on this report? What is this report helping us do? And what we ultimately decided was it could be our advantage to play the field position game and punt more frequently than we normally would. Our coach hates punting around midfield. He feels like in high school, you got to try and snatch those extra opportunities. But, this team is a lot more predictable, and we were better on defense last year. So we made the decision, we get around midfield, even if we'd normally go for it, we're going to punt and play field position because this is a good team. But we pretty much know what they're going to do if we can pin them inside their 20. Now, I'm not going to say we had an amazing punter, but our punter could at least get us, around that 20-yard line, sometimes inside it. And now we'll let our defense go to work and rely on them to get us in a position to get a short field, because as soon as they get outside of that, this team is really dangerous. Now for you coaches, offensively, these are some reports you might be familiar with. The opponent, defensive front, and coverage reports. This report I ran for an opponent we played last year. We play them every year. So it was just it's pretty straightforward. They run a 4-2-5. They don't really change as you see what they do. They ran a 4-front 97% of the plays. I think the one that they didn't was like a first and goal. They brought in a goal line defense. So as with the formation report, where it's giving you those offensive breakdowns, this is just giving you those defensive ones based on formation, the field position, fronts, down and distance, and the fronts by down. Same thing with the coverage. It's just going to mirror your fronts there. Something we don't do is we don't fill this out for every game of our opponent's film. I'm sure a lot of you are in that same boat. Us being a spread offense, we play it, this team plays a team and we play them as well in our league that runs a wishbone triple option. Well, there's no point in us doing a defensive breakdown for that game because every coach is going to have a different way and it's not really going to apply to what we do. So as offensive coaches, you can kind of sit there and say you're a little lucky because the defense might change week to week at the high school level for you like it tends to do for us. Whereas you defensive coaches, it's the same offense week in and week out. I know it's a joking battle between our staffs about that. But this report, while it is pretty surface level, it is a good point for you to take a look at as an offensive coach if it is a team that runs a lot of different coverages and fronts, because you can get some good tendencies out of this. The report that we tend to lean on a bit more is the blitz report. The one on the left here is just the summary blitz report that HUDL will provide you. If you've tagged the blitz column, you're going to get down here. You're going to get blitzes by front as well. The one that we add, because as I said, we run a lot of jet. Our head coach has us run this report every week. What does this team do to stop jet? That's our number one concern because for us, jet is our big home run play. And then we're going to try and run inside zone off of that jet. So we do a lot of jet sweep motion and try and come back with inside zone underneath. And so we got to figure out how is that team stopping jet. We'll get teams that they don't blitz. They'll try and have a safety run the alley. Or we're going to get teams where the linebackers fly like heck, which is what we want to see because then we're going to start running inside zone underneath it. So as I said, this is a team we play year in and year out. And last year, we really struggled. Week one was part of it, but we really struggled against them getting jet going, particularly when we were running jet with our weaker running back. And we're like, all right, well, that makes sense. It's our weaker running back is our A-back last year. He's just not as good a player. Then when we got this report back, we looked at it and go, well, no, they're blitzing more against when he's in jet motion rather than when our B-back is in jet motion. So we tried to figure out why is that. And what we ended up realizing was that when we're running that A-back in jet motion, so he's coming left to right across the formation for us, he's running jet towards our better tackle and our better running back who's also a better blocker. So this defensive coach said, all right, well, we're going to overwhelm those two players on the edge and we're going to bring pressure there. And then we're going to force them to have to run jet, even though it's with their better player. They're going to have to run it the other way towards their better blockers. And it was something that we were seeing them blitz to that side during the game, but we weren't putting the reasoning behind the concept together during the game. In the game, that's the farthest thing from your mind. But now when we go to play them this year, whoever they deem is going to be our better back, we're now prepared for them to start to blitz that side that he's blocking on, and that tackle is returning for us. So I expect they're going to have a similar philosophy to try and overwhelm him. He's a big kid, but he's not the fastest kid. So if you can get someone who's quick off that edge, it can give him some problems. Looking at it now, it makes all the sense in the world. During the game, it was just a headache for us. So blitz report is a great custom column report that if you run jet, I highly, highly recommend it, or some type of motion in your offense. Take a look if teams are blitzing to that motion to see what they're doing. If you want, you can even get more specific and create a column for which players are they blitzing. We'll get teams that'll try and blitz underneath the jet motion, send that linebacker and like B-gap and try and cut it off. This team was blitzing off the edge to overwhelm those edge blockers. So if you want to get that granular and label that, you certainly can, and it's something I would encourage as well. Now, moving to self-scouting tools, it's going to be a little bit smaller. And I think that's just a product of HUDL. And as coaches, I think that we don't really self-scout as much because we do have to invest so much time into scouting up that opponent. But we're going to look at our play calling tendencies, and then we're going to go back into formation report one last time. And I'm really going to touch on how you can tag your plays to make that formation report the best self-scouting tool it can be. So if you see the reports tab up here in your library, we use this for self-scouting, and this is all data. If you have HUDL Assist, that HUDL Assist will generate. Again, I'll have to find out about how it works since you guys only have the 3 downs, how that could affect this report. I would think it would still work. It would just not show any information on 4th down, but I could be wrong on that. What we do with this, so this is all just basic information as far as run, pass, down, play direction, distance. And as you see over here, you can even switch it to half game or a quarter. And then the bottom left, you can do it as yourself, which is what we use it for. Because like I just said, we don't want to spend as much time self-scouting. So our head coach uses this as a running tally. Each week, once our game is broken down, we get it back from assist. We just add it to this and just get an overview of how we, any tendencies that might pop up. We do a pretty good job, I think, of staying fairly balanced. What we will see in the formation report is when we do have the time, we get a bye week during our season if you make the playoffs, you get that last week before that, you get a bye week going into it. So we use that time to kind of reset and find if there are tendencies we need to correct heading into the second half of our season there. So this really helps us throughout the season when we don't have as much time to get super in-depth into these stats. And it's not something that we have to put a lot of work into. So it's nice. It does save you some time on that. But when we do have that time, this is when I come back to the formation reports. And what I'm going to discuss in this is this specific formation and how you tag your formations in your video library is going to directly affect the outcome of what this formation report gives you. And you'll see in the bottom left here, I have this backfields portion tagged here. And I'm going to start with the base formation. So up top, this is what we call black. It's a tight end, 2 receivers to his side as well, and our wide receiver to the opposite side of the formation. What this backfields column is, this is a HUDL generated column. It's something that I admittedly didn't use until this past season when I started working at HUDL and I started talking to someone who's also a football coach here. But what it is, it basically allows you to account for any adjustments you might make to your base formation. So as I said, this is our tight end and two wide receivers to that side, another wide receiver split out here. But how we use how we call our offense is we have 7 base formations, and then we use what we call as tags to manipulate those base formations. Sure, all of you have something similar. Some of you might have more formations, you might have less, but we can't just line up in the same thing every time. So we want to do some things to help get our best players in even better positions. So some tags that we use here, we've got nasty, we've got pistol, sniffer, nasty up. There's a bunch more. I can show you our library and how we have them all categorized in there. The one thing I do wish we did at HUDL, I wish we changed this instead of backfields, called it formation variations or something. Because I think a lot of coaches, when we see this, we think backfield, all right, who's directly behind the lineman there? What you can do, and I'll show you on the next slide here, is that you can actually manipulate anyone that could potentially be in the backfield. So you can move that tight end over here. You can move that wide receiver into the backfield or on the other side of the formation. It lets you change the entire formation. It's not limited to just the backfield. So I think that wording isn't great and sometimes kind of puts coaches off of it. So as we input, so this is what happens when you use that backfields column. So this is our nasty, this is our pistol, and this is our sniffer. You'll notice, so nasty, we're just loosening up that tight end a little bit. Pistol, he's off the line of scrimmage, and now our slot's on. And his sniffer, now he's stacked behind that offensive tackle, kind of like an H-back here. And one thing you'll see with this formation, if you notice, I don't have direction labeled in this formation. And the reason for that is that when you put the direction into the formation here, it actually is going to half the amount of information you have. So I'll jump back one slide real quick. So if I were to just call this black left, every time we lined up in this exact variation, I'm going to get only the times that I'm running black left. And then if I were to have the opposite side of that in black right, I'm going to get all the times, and HUDL is going to treat that as just its own formation. So instead of having 11 plays that I run to the left, I might only have 5. I'm going to only have 5 that I ran to the left or in black left, and then 5 that I ran to the left and black right, and there might be a one-off in there if you've got a penalty or something like that. So if you find yourself labeling direction when you're labeling your formations, you're cutting down the amount of information you'll get from this formation report. And this formation report will account for direction. So if you take that out of your formations, if you look at strength here, there it is. If you look at strength is how HUDL's going to, when you put that formation in, HUDL's going to say, okay, you've designated left is, in this case, the left side of the formation strong. So if I see this diagram flipped, I know that the right side is now strong. So you don't have to worry about accounting for left and right in your direction when you're putting it in there. And if you include any of these variations as well, say if I put in black left nasty, that's going to create another formation card for just that variation of it. So you're continuing to cut down the amount of information you have, and it's just going to become less and less accurate for you. So if I can't stress that enough, if you do use directions, try and take it out and just run a report and see what it looks like. If you don't like it, you can put it back in. For me, I think it gives you a better picture, because then if you start to use this backfield column, you can get a mini breakdown on any variation you have. So looking at this, there's a couple things that jump out to me. This is our 3-game breakdown. In Massachusetts, we have a 7-game regular season. So 3 games is basically our halfway point of our regular season. So we tried to get some feedback on what we were doing halfway through. You'll notice here, look at our strong versus weak. We're running 23 of our plays away from this tight end side. And that was something that surprised us. And then on top of that, 94% of our plays were going with motion. And we didn't fully understand what were we doing that was causing this. It didn't feel like we were running every play away from the strength and with motion. So when we got into the variations here, we saw it again. In nasty, we're going to the weak side. Going to the weak side in pistol, and we're going to the weak side in sniffer. What we had realized we were doing, our tight end was our best player last year, and we like doing a lot with our tight ends. So we were moving him off of the line of scrimmage, and we were running him in motion, like in pistol here. We were bringing him in motion back across the formation and then running either inside zone or power or outside zone behind him with him blocking. And that's something that had I just run a report with either black left pistol or black left nasty as their own formations, it might not have shown as much variance right away, and I might have overlooked that stat. But because I had it on that overall formation report, it was something that jumped out to us right away. Because I might dismiss this. If I had black left pistol and black right pistol, these numbers would be even lower. And I'd go as a coach, I'd go, oh, well, it's only 4 or 5 times. Like, that's not that many. But then when you realize it's almost every time because all that information's together, you realize it is a huge, huge misstep on your part. So it's something that we worked as the season went along to improve how we tag the data, so tag the game, so the data was showing us these big tendencies that we had. So as I wrap up here, this is the last thing I want to discuss. I really hope that you guys can see the value of the formation report, the custom report, the what's next, any other report that you want to run, and how they all kind of work off of each other. But as I said at the beginning, I hope that if you take anything away, that you can do pretty much anything with this formation report. And if you have the time, you can put those stats into it. So I just want to thank you guys again. About me, if anybody wants to contact me, more than happy to, jump on another Zoom with you guys, or answer any questions you might have via email as well.
All right. Thank you, Rich. Stick around here for a moment. I'm hoping there's some questions. If anybody wants to just turn your camera on and talk directly to him so you can explain it better, feel free. If not, write it in the chat bar. There was some discussion about if us Canadians can contact HUDL directly, they're able to set up your solution to have a 55-yard line instead. So there definitely is an option out there. Just contact them directly and they'll take care of you. And I don't think we have HUDL Assist yet. I think there was some chatter in the chat box that they don't offer it to us, or they're not anymore.
That is good to know.
But what is that? That's essentially where somebody breaks it down and tags it all for you?
So they'll give you at least HUDL Assist. It's 16 columns of data is how we pitch it, but it's a lot of the mundane stuff. So it'll be down, distance. It'll be yards gained. It'll be basic run pass breakdown, and then based on how you input your formations into the assist diagrams, it'll give you the strong and weak side. So when I was talking about taking the direction out of your formation names, it'll include the strength of the formation for you. So it saves a lot of time just doing the stuff that are the very basic stats of the film. So you can really focus on a lot of the stuff we talked about tonight.
One question I had, a lot of the stuff that you talked about tonight, is it like what package is it included in? Like, is it all under the gold package or? So
I'm going to take a look at, because I honestly don't know what my team has. I'll have to take a look at that.
Is there any questions out there, guys? If you want to, and gals, if you want to type it in, please do. Or like I said, turn your camera on, join us and ask a question directly. So it looks like we have the gold package, but I don't believe you need the gold package. I think if you purchase Play Tools, then that will be included. I'm not 100% sure on that. But yeah, we have the gold package for our team. All right, and as we wait for any last questions, as a Bostonian, is that what you are? Are you heartbroken of Brady, or is it's time? It's just he had a good run. Let's move on. I would say Brady. I'm much more in the he had a good run camp. The Gronk one was the one that hurt more because it felt like he basically quit on the Patriots. Not that he stepped away from football last year. It feels like had he been elsewhere or had Brady gone somewhere else, he would have played. And that was kind of the disheartening thing. I give Tom credit. He stuck out his contract, even though he might not have been happy, he at least played while Gronk did. So that one stung a bit more for me. Well, you'd be happy to know that our executive director for Football Alberta is a Patriots fan from, I don't know, way back when. I won't say, probably the 70s, probably dated him a bit, but he has his old school Patriots jersey, and he was happy to have you on here. So I don't see any other questions. Like we said earlier, this will be recorded, or it is recorded. Are you able to share that presentation or PDF it, or what are you able to do? Yeah, I can create a PDF of that and pass that along to you as well. I'd be more than happy to. Are you guys looking like your season's going to be on track to play? We hope so. Fingers crossed. We're still shut. We're still shut down until probably at least July at the best. If not, we'll be lucky to start in September, I would say. Yeah, that's there's strong discussion about us not having school at least in the building until October, and so sports would then be held off for a month. Yeah. So we might not have playoffs this year as an alternative they're looking at. Just play your regular season, and that's all you get. Our local high school organization is definitely wants to go, whether it's in the fall or even doing a spring season, which we've never done. So that'd be interesting. Yeah. I believe that's it. We'll leave it there. And thank you very much, sir. I appreciate it. If you would email me the PDF. I know there's a lot of people who like to watch this after as well. Yeah, that'd be great. I really appreciate you guys having me on.
I will do my best to get some of the answers about the differences in how HUDL works for Canadian coaches as well, and I'll pass those along too.
Yeah, great. Thanks. Have a good night.
All right, thank you.
See you later.